Hello and welcome again. In the previous video, we talked about the inline CSS. Inline CSS is not recommended, and though it is having a high priority, it means if you apply external CSS, then internal CSS, and also inline CSS, so the inline CSS will work. But as you can see, if you use the inline CSS, there will be a lot of code, a lot of CSS, because on each tag you have to mention it manually and give CSS properties and values for each tag. So that will create a huge code, and the size will be too large. So the size matters. That's why we don't suggest the inline CSS. Okay, so how can we use the internal CSS? For that, first we need the CSS selectors. To know about the CSS selectors, when we use the inline CSS, we don't have to select any element of HTML, because in line with the tag we just give the style attribute and use different properties and values. But when you come to the internal CSS, we don't use that inline, so we have to select the tag and then apply the styles. Suppose we just apply below the title, open a style tag, then inside the tag, for example, if we want to give some styles to this one, web designing and web technologies, here we have the h3, so we select this h3 and then give some styles here, h3, then open the curly braces, open close the curly braces. This means that all the tags which is h3, so we have the first h3 here and the second h3 for or if wanna style our list or table, the same way we can use their tag list or like table, both. So and this was the first selector, which is tag. And think of the situation that we want to just give a style or apply a style or design to one of our h3s, not to all of them. So what will happen then when we use this type of selectors, h3, the text selector, and we just give a style, for example the color blue? So this is the same syntax that we talked in the previous video, property colon value semicolon, the same here inside the curly braces. So when we give one style and save it, one style to h3, it will be applied to all of them. Now did not apply to the first one because it is having inline CSS, and I told you that inline CSS has a high priority than the internal or external. So when I remove this one and save it, it will be applied on this one as well. So I just wanted to apply on this one, but because tag is a general selector, the second selector is the ID selector. Each your element must have a unique ID, not must have, if there's a need. So the ID must be unique for each element. Suppose if on the first h3 I give the ID of, the second I'll give it an ID of second title. So with this way we have two different IDs, and we can style them, we can apply design differently for both of them. Instead of the tag, now we are using the ID. So how can we use the ID? We have to put the hash and the ID. So for the first one, first title, and again the curly braces. Now this is simple CSS syntax, color, then blue. Let's save it. Okay, first title, let's see what is wrong here. Okay, this is first title, that's wrong. Okay, now applied. And for the second one, we can just enter and put the other hash for the ID. Second title, color red. So yeah, we got here red and the blue here. So this was a method to apply two different styles, two different for the h3. The tags are the same, but we use the ID selector to style them differently. And this way again, I don't recommend to use this ID, because for each tag the ID is different and must be different, and when they are different, so there will lots of code, and it is like almost same as the inline styling. Instead, I recommend you the third one, which is the class. Yeah. So a class is like a many to many relationship. Here the class, one class can be used in multiple tags, and one tag can have multiple classes. So this is a very nice one, and it means that if we just create a class color red, if we can use them tens of hundreds of times. So it does not matter whether your class is already present or not. Let me remove this one, and when we use the class, we put a dot before the class name. So we put like blue, for example, class text dash blue. Does not matter, this is the naming. You can use text dash blue, we can use all of them small letters or all capital letters. Dot text blue. So I recommend you to use the camel case blue text, sorry, text blue. You can use this way, or you can use this way, text dash blue. This is the naming system. Okay, so we just say the color blue. Save it. Wherever we use this class, we will get the text blue there. For example, for this first h3, we just put a space after the id and use the class attribute. Inside the class attribute, we just use the text dash blue. Let's save it. And yeah, we got. And as I said, class is like a many to many relationship. We can use one class in many classes, so we cannot use the same id in different texts, but we can use the same class in many texts. For example, inside our OOL ordered list, we just say the class, and for the class text blue. Let's save it. Here we got. And if we need inside the table, for example, our heading inside the table, we just use class text blue. We got that. So class is a better way. The method of selectors are the same in the internal CSS or external CSS. It only differs in the inline, that we don't need these selectors because we are using inline CSS. Okay, so if I make another class, for example, dot bg, or you can do reverse, dot text large. For example, I make text large, and like font size 40 pixel. Okay, save it, and now I can use this wherever I want to make the text larger of about 40 px. So for the first h3, as I said, we can use one class in many. Let's see, text blue is used many times here. Okay, is used here, here, and in the table. And the same way we can use multiple classes in a tag. Now this is h3. The first class was text blue, the second class will be the text lg, which I recently created. As you can see, we got a larger font size for this one, and you can create it is not necessary to create here and then come here. You can just name a class here, for example, text list, text medium, for example, text mg, text medium, and then come here and just say about the text mg. Font size, for example, let's say 23 pixels for the list items. We got a bigger text items. So this was how to apply the internal CSS, and to know about CSS selectors. We have complex CSS selectors as well. For example, if we want to select some uh, like inner elements or sub elements of sub elements of an HTML element. For example, let's say, let's create a div. Let's say we have a div here, and inside the div, let's say we have an h4 and title of this section. Then under that we have some text. So we can use a class, for example, for this one, class is class service, and I want to style this paragraph. So I can just use by the top order. Let's say uh, go to the service section and style the P. For example, suppose we might have paragraph here as well, and we don't want to style this one. So we have a paragraph here and a paragraph here. If I use the tag P, both will the style will be applied to both of them. For example, the tag P, the color to gray. Let's say both are now in gray in color. So I don't want to make both of them gray, just the paragraph which is inside the service. So we can use the subclass or sub element style as well, and select how to select them. I will say navigate to the service and select the P tag. So for that I have to say dot service, go to the service class, space, and select the P tag and the curly braces. Simple color gray, save it, and now we got gray to the first one, not the second. Okay, so this was more we will know in the later videos, the coming videos. So thank you very much for this one.